The ink on the waiver was barely dry when the courtroom fell into a hollow silence. Nathan, my husband's son, already had his phone out, ready to announce victory. His sister Julia was crying the happy kind of tears. Their lawyer, a bulldog named Holt, who'd steamrolled a dozen grieving widows, turned to the last page of the estate file. He read one line. His face emptied. The smug confidence slid off so completely that the whole room stiffened. Nobody knew yet what that sentence meant, but everyone felt it. Victory had just turned to ash. That sentence, buried in a blue folder I'd guarded for 3 years, would shatter a family and prove my husband had been far smarter than his greedy children imagined. To understand how handing them everything they wanted ruined them, go back to the morning after I buried Marcus. I'm Elena, and if quiet strength is your kind of story, the kind where the calmest person in the room holds all the cards, stay with me. The farmhouse was so still the day after the funeral I could hear the coffee maker's tiny clicks. I'd lived there 6 years and knew every complaining floorboard. Marcus and I married when I was 34, and he was 58. The whole county had an opinion. I kept books for a co-op 2 towns over, which meant I was good with numbers and bad at caring what people whispered. That morning I stood in his old flannel, cradling a mug I couldn't drink, trying to remember how to be a person. I didn't get long. By 7:30, tires crunched on gravel, 3 vehicles pulling up in a tidy, expectant row. Nathan's pickup, Patricia's polished sedan, and Julia and her husband Brent's SUV. They straightened jackets and checked each other's faces, getting their expressions right. Brent carried a leather folder. They hadn't come to grieve. Grieving people don't carpool. I let them knock. I wanted 60 more seconds of the house being only mine, because I already knew the moment I opened that door, the fighting would begin. They swept past me like they owned the place, which in their minds they did. Marcus's older sister Patricia led the charge, wearing her family name like combat gear. "Elena," she said, scanning the living room, "we need to talk about what happens now." No one said sorry for your loss. No one asked how I was holding up. Brent set his folder on the table where Marcus and I had shared 10,000 meals and started listing assets like a grocery order. The farm, the house, the accounts, the equipment, the mineral rights. Nathan nodded along. Julia dabbed her eyes and said she just wanted what was fair. I stood in my dead husband's flannel and let them talk. Then, Patricia delivered the line she'd practiced in the car. She looked me dead in the eye. Chin lifted. "You married him. We're made of him." There it was. 6 years of marriage, 3 years of driving him to chemo. And to this family I was a houseguest who'd overstayed. Brent slid a single page across the table. My stomach turned cold. I recognized the letterhead and the shaky signature at the bottom, Marcus's, from when his hands barely worked. A loan, $150,000, taken against the apple barn 8 months earlier, while he was deep in his 2nd round of chemo. The stated purpose, barn repairs. The real purpose sat in my dining room with his arms crossed. I remembered the day they got that signature. Nathan had shown up with a lender I'd never heard of, claiming the barn roof was failing. I'd pushed back hard, called the bank, tried to freeze it. But the loan was against an asset Marcus still legally controlled, and he was of sound mind. He signed because Nathan was his son, and a dying man wants to believe his son. I'd fought and I'd lost. Now Brent tapped the paper, watching my face, waiting for me to crumble. "The estate's responsible for this. Sooner we settle, better for you." He thought the debt was a knife at my throat. I wasn't panicking. I was doing arithmetic I'd been running quietly for 3 years, and the numbers were landing somewhere they couldn't see. I folded the loan paper and set it down gently. "All right," I said. Something in my calm made Patricia's eyes narrow, like she'd heard a sound she couldn't place. My lawyer, Winston Aldridge, arrived an hour after they left. He'd done estate work in that county for 40 years and had handled Marcus's affairs long before I came. I told him everything they demanded, every cent, property, and account. Winston took off his glasses. "Elena, they have no standing. I will fight every inch. We can challenge the loan, contest their claims, drag this out and bleed them dry. You don't give these people anything. A good man offering war." I poured him coffee, and said the thing that would race through the county by Sunday. "Winston, I don't want to fight. Hand it all over." He froze, cup halfway to his mouth. "Say that again." I repeated it. "Give them the estate. All of it. Don't contest a thing." He thought grief had cracked something in me. He spent 20 minutes trying to talk me out of it while I couldn't tell him why. A plan that leaks is just a rumor. I let the smartest lawyer in the county leave believing I was the dumbest woman in it. Word travels fast, and bad decisions fastest. By week's end, everyone knew the young widow was handing the farm to his kids without a fight. Versions varied too. Heartbroken. Never cared about the farm. Or the meanest one, Patricia quietly seated. I was a gold digger caught and walking away. I felt it at the co-op on Monday. Conversations stopping when I walked in. A rancher I'd done books for since before I married Marcus looking at me with pity. People mistake silence for weakness. But I had plenty to say. I just wasn't going to say it where it could get back to Nathan. Some things you only reveal once. To understand why I was so calm, go back 3 years. To the day we set it in motion. A doctor's office with bad carpet and worse news. Stage 4. The oncologist gave us a range of time like directions to a town no one wants to visit. Marcus held my hand and didn't cry. He was a farmer. He understood the only dignity was in being ready. Driving home, he watched the orchard's trees his father and grandfather had planted and said, "Elena, I need to put everything right while my head's clear." He knew his children in that worn-out way. Nathan had taken from the farm before and called it a loan. Julia had married a man who treated other people's money like weather. And he knew the day he was gone, they'd come for the land and for me, with 1,000 ways to drag it through court. "I won't let them turn you into a tenant in your own house," he said. "We'll do this the quiet way." The quiet way was a revocable living trust built by an attorney 3 counties away. Far enough that no one local would notice our car. His office smelled of old paper and pipe tobacco, and he listened to Marcus's whole situation without surprise. Blended family. Adult kids with sticky fingers. A daughter with a scheming husband. A sister who thought she ran the bloodline. The attorney explained. Create the trust. Move your property into it: house, land, accounts, equipment. Retitle them so the trust owns them. When Marcus died, anything in the trust wouldn't be part of his estate, wouldn't go through probate, couldn't be fought over. It would simply, quietly, already belong to whoever the trust named. "And who do you want to name?" the attorney asked. Marcus looked at me without hesitation. "My wife, Elena, trustee and sole beneficiary. Everything that matters goes in and goes to her." I started to object, to suggest leaving something clear for the kids. Marcus squeezed my hand. "We'll leave them exactly what they've earned. Creating a trust is nothing if you don't fund it." Over 2 months, quietly, county office by county office, we moved everything. New deed transferring the farm into the Keller Family Living Trust. Same with the farmhouse. We changed the savings and operating accounts so the trust owned them. Even the good equipment got retitled. I kept the records in a blue folder. By the time we were done, Marcus Keller personally owned almost nothing. The trust owned it all and answered to me. We told no one. "A secret 2 people keep is a secret," Marcus said. 3 people is just slow news. But he intentionally left out one thing. The old apple barn and its small parcel. He wanted something in his personal name so it would look real. He also made sure the loan Nathan pushed got tied to that personal property, not the trust. That barn became the rope the greedy would hang themselves with. If I die owning nothing, they'll smell it and go looking. So we give them a meal. Let them win the estate. Just never fight them for it. The second you fight, you make it look valuable. I didn't fully grasp it until the morning Brent slid that loan across my table. That was when I saw the trap had a second jaw, and they were inside it. Back in the present, the family stopped pretending to grieve. Nathan hired Curtis Holt, a lawyer with a billboard and a reputation for making widows settle. Within 10 days, I got a letter demanding a full inventory of the estate with a threatening deadline. I read it twice, noted the date, and went back to my dinner. They were demanding an inventory of the estate. I was happy to give them one. The estate, legally, was a barn. a weed-choked parcel, a small checking account, and that $150,000 debt. Everything they actually wanted wasn't in the estate at all. But Holt didn't know that, and Nathan didn't know that. They kept sharpening a knife for a steak that wasn't on the plate. A few days later, Julia came alone, no Brent, no Nathan. She said she wanted to talk privately. I let her in because I still remembered the girl she'd been before she married Brent. She sat nervously, and eventually the reason spilled out. Their 9-year-old daughter Sophie had drawn a picture of the farmhouse with 2 stick figures labeled Anna, Lena, and me. Julia showed me the photo. She asks about you every day. Then, almost as an afterthought, she let slip they needed $110,000 by spring, or they'd lose their house. Brent's store had failed. Marcus's estate was their life raft. I saw the fear underneath. Julia wasn't cruel like Nathan. She was scared and hitched to a man who'd spent her father's grave for a down payment. I almost felt sorry for her until she suggested I take a small settlement and walk away for everyone's sake. I realized she'd been sent as a scout. The softness inside me cooled. After she left, I tucked Sophie's drawing into the blue folder. Whatever happened to the adults, that child would get a door out. Meanwhile, Patricia worked the county. She made calls, mentioned things at church, had coffee with the women who organized every funeral luncheon, and let it be known sorrowfully that Marcus's widow was being difficult. She never told a direct lie, just arranged true-sounding pieces into a false shape and let other mouths carry it. Within 2 weeks, the whole town felt a degree colder every time I entered a room. Her line echoed everywhere. She married him. They're made of him. I heard it secondhand at the pharmacy. I didn't answer. You don't swing at a punch designed to make you swing. I wrote down the exact words and who spread them, and put that paper in the blue folder not for evidence, but to remember, when the day came, which lies I'd be straightening. I drove to Winston's office and made a decision in the parking lot. I wouldn't tell him about the trust. I'd kept this secret airtight for 3 years, and the closer we got to the hearing, the more I knew it depended on no one seeing it coming. Law offices have staff, phones, partners who play golf. Secrets leak through good men. So I sat across from Winston and let him believe he represented a woman who'd surrendered. He had Holt's demand letter and was worried. If you won't fight the estate, at least let me fight the loan. $150,000 against you is serious. Don't fight the loan either, I said. Don't fight anything. Just make sure everything goes through open court, on the record. Whatever they want, they get in front of a judge. Winston stared at me, sensing a shape in the dark. Elena, is there something you're not telling me? I looked him in the eye and told the only lie I told in this story. No, Winston, I'm just tired of fighting. That night, I opened the blue folder. Behind the deeds was a sealed envelope Marcus gave me, with instructions not to open until I needed it. I needed it. His handwriting was shaky, but the words were steady. The center read, "They'll come for it all, Elena. Don't fight them. Let the paper do the talking." I read it 4 times, pressed it flat on the desk. He'd seen everything coming: Nathan's loan, the demands, my temptation to fight and ruin the trap. He'd reached through his own death to put a hand on my shoulder and tell me to hold still. I folded the letter and felt not just grief, but a quiet, fierce readiness. 2 days before the hearing, Curtis Holt actually read the file. He pulled the public property records and found the farm deed didn't list Marcus Keller. It listed the Keller Family Living Trust, recorded 3 years prior. The house, the main accounts, the equipment all outside the estate. Holt tried to warn Nathan, putting it in writing and recommending they drop the claim. Nathan, certain and greedy, signed an acknowledgement that he'd been advised to withdraw and was choosing to proceed. That's what I'm paying you for. Make it go away. Holt, now shielded by his client's refusal, filed the trust document as a routine disclosure and prepared to let the courtroom deliver the truth. The night before the hearing, I reread Marcus's letter. I thought of him at this desk, dying and unafraid, building a fortress around a woman his children saw as temporary. The county called me a fool, but Marcus treated me like the one person steady enough for the long game. I put the letter away, laid out my coat, and set the blue folder by the door. I tucked Sophie's crayon drawing between the deeds, a reminder of who I was fighting for and who I wasn't. I slept deep and woke to a gray morning that smelled like an ending. The courtroom was packed. Patricia had turned a legal proceeding into a public event, and the benches held the same faces from church potlucks. The family sat united on the right, Nathan leaning back like he owned the room, Brent doing math behind his eyes, Julia pale, Patricia chin high. Holt sat with his files squared, the only one looking like a man waiting for a storm. I sat on the left with Winston, who still believed he was watching his client surrender. Across the aisle, Nathan smiled at me small. Victorious, I didn't smile back. I just looked down. Let him think it was defeat. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, opened the proceeding to distribute the estate of Marcus Keller. Holt stood and stated that Nathan and Julia, as direct heirs, claimed the entirety of the estate, every asset, every property. He used the exact words from my kitchen. Nathan nodded. Patricia's chin lifted. Then the judge turned to me. Mrs. Keller, do you intend to assert your spousal share? I stood, voice quiet. No, Your Honor. I'm not asserting any claim. Whatever is in Marcus's estate, his children can have it all. I'll sign the waiver here, on the record. A soft, triumphant sound swept the family's side. Nathan clapped Brent's shoulder. Patricia closed her eyes and answered prayer. The clerk brought the waiver. Winston touched my arm. Once you sign, it's done. I looked at him with a calm that surprised even me. I know exactly what I'm signing. I've known for 3 years. He pulled back, seeing me for the first time. I signed my name in steady handwriting. The family leaned forward, hungry. Nathan had his phone half raised. The clerk took the paper, and they erupted in restrained celebration. The outsider had folded. Blood had won. And in that joy, the judge, being thorough, asked Holt to read the full asset disclosure, including the trust document he'd filed. Holt stood slowly. He started small. The apple barn. The parcel. A checking account with roughly $4,000. The family nodded, still smiling, waiting for the good part. He turned the page and paused. Nathan's smile froze. Holt read, let the record reflect that the real property known as the Keller farm, together with the residence and primary financial accounts, was transferred by recorded deed into the Keller Family Living Trust 3 years prior to the decedent's death, and is therefore not part of this estate. The silence that fell was deafening. What? Nathan said, confused. What do you mean not part of the estate? Holt stared at the page. Nathan stood, voice rising. Read it again. Where's the farm? Where's the money? The judge told him to sit. He didn't. Brent went gray. Patricia's chin dropped. I sat with my hands folded on the blue folder, calm as a Sunday morning, while the paper did exactly what my husband promised it would. The judge removed her glasses. Mr. Holt, are the assets your clients claimed not in the estate? Holt said, the principal assets are in a living trust. My clients have claimed, and Mrs. Keller has not contested, the estate as it actually exists. The judge turned a page, which consists of a barn, a parcel, roughly $4,000, subject to a secured debt of $150,000. There it was. The estate they demanded was empty and owed a fortune. Brent understood first, his life raft turning to an anchor. Julia's hand went to her chest. Patricia blinked, blood useless against a balanced sheet. Nathan stood frozen, realizing the loan he'd engineered. The knife he'd pressed to my throat was attached to the barn now legally his. He'd spent months fighting to win a debt with his own fingerprints on it. Nathan turned on Holt, demanding how this happened. Holt said flatly, I advised you of a title complication. You instructed me to proceed. Nathan spun toward me. You did this. You set us up. I stood, voice level as a tabletop. No, Nathan. Your father did this 3 years ago, while you were too busy circling him to ask what he was thinking. I just declined to save you from a debt you created. You wanted the estate, demanded every asset. The court gave you exactly what you asked for. The truth in front of 40 witnesses is heavy. The loan that was meant to trap me was now his and his sister's, secured against a failing barn. He'd walk directly onto his own weapon. If you believe quiet strength wins in the end, please hit like and subscribe to Tranquil Drama Stories. It truly helps this community grow. The fallout was immediate. Brent turned on Julia in a furious whisper. Her father, her family. She'd promised money. The farm was worth a fortune. And now they owned a worthless barn and debt. Julia shrank while he turned ruin into her fault. Patricia rose trembling, demanding how Marcus's blood could get nothing. I faced her gently, because gentle cuts deeper. You told everyone I married him, that they were made of him, that blood was all that mattered. Marcus made his choice in writing, signed, notarized, recorded 3 years ago while he was well. You had every chance to ask him what he wanted. You were all too busy deciding what you were owed. She had no answer. There is no answer to a recorded deed. The judge made it official. The barn, parcel, small account, and debt went to Nathan and Julia. My waiver was recorded. The trust stood untouched. The gavel fell on a courtroom that had come to watch a widow lose, and instead watched a family lose to itself. In the weeks that followed, they tried to challenge the trust. But lawyers told them a properly funded, notarized, recorded living trust was nearly unbreakable. They let it go. Brent left Julia before spring. Patricia stopped going to church. The town's opinion turned fast. The same people who'd pitied me now claiming they'd always known the quiet bookkeeper was nobody's fool. I didn't correct them. I just went back to balancing the co-op's books, living in the farmhouse that had been mine all along. One piece of business remained. I called Julia and asked her to bring Sophie to the farm. She came nervous. I told her I'd set up a fund inside the trust for Sophie's education, every year through college. Untouchable by anyone but the girl herself. Julia cried real tears and asked why after everything. Because she drew me a house and called me family, and never asked for a thing. Sophie ran through the same grass I'd watched that first morning. The adults got exactly what they reached for. The little girl got a clean start. People sometimes ask if I feel bad. I don't. I never took what wasn't mine. Never raised my voice. I simply stood still and let people who decided I was nothing walk into the consequences of their own greed. Dignity isn't shouting the loudest. It's knowing exactly where you stand and having the patience to let the truth be read aloud by the very people who swore you had nothing. That's the story of the day I handed greedy heirs everything they asked for and watched it ruin them. If my Marcus's quiet wisdom moved you, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Tranquil Drama Stories for more tales of calm strength. I'll see you in the next one.